Okay, cool. It's already 6:01, guys. We will start quickly without any further delay. We have interesting yet a little difficult topic coming ahead, right? So I'm sure everybody is geared up. And firstly, good evening, everyone, right? I'm hoping everybody is having a good day as of now. Yeah. Um, cool. So a couple of you are already here. So good evening, everyone who's already here. Okay, Aditi is back. Good evening, Aditi. No problem, Aditi. It's as I've told in the earlier class as well. We do not have like a tight packed schedule. We can do whatever revisions you want to, right? So it's your choice basically. If you all want anything to be revised, like that particular chapter or topic, just inform me the before class so that we can talk about that in the next class, right? So it's totally up to you guys. If you all have any suggestions, please drop them in the chat box, right? Okay, Ronak is back. Hi Ronak, good evening. Cool, so I'm hoping others will join in the meantime. I'll quickly do a round of introductions, right? Cool, so my name is Nikitha, as most of you all know, and I'm the history educator here at Unacademy Scholars channel. I take classes for both standard 11th and 12th. And as far as my educational qualifications are concerned, I have recently graduated from Ashoka University with a bachelor's degree, and I have a major in history and a minor in political science. So that's a little bit about me. Okay, Aditya, chapter 7 for 11th standard students will start as soon as the quiz is over for chapter 3, right? So don't worry, we'll start ASAP in the second next class, right? Okay, so I'll talk very briefly about Unacademy's plus features. You can actually set out your own houses and learn live from the top educators of India. There's unlimited access to so many courses. There are regular doubt clearing sessions, answer writing sessions. Along with that, there's also a provision for practice tests and live test series. Then there's exhaustive coverage of syllabus, mentorship and guidance, along with access to study materials, which are usually in the form of PDF. So when it comes to pricing for plus subscriptions, we have 6 different ranges of subscriptions, starting with a 6-month and going till almost 2 years. So the prices you can actually see on the left side of the screen. These are the original prices. But if you use the code, which is TUM10, you'll be basically given a 10% off on the subscription. And these are the post-discounted prices you see on the right side. So make a note of them. And moving on to Iconic, here the features are even better and greater in the sense that there's personal mentorship provided. There are live doubt solving sessions, weekly reports, parent connect, and also study planners, right? So when it comes to pricing for Iconic, we have even more number of ranges, which starts from a 3-month subscription and goes on till almost 48 months, right? The same thing, the prices on the left side are the actual prices. After using the code, you'll get a 10% discount, and these are the post discounted prices, right? So make a note of these and feel free to go ahead with whichever one you feel comfortable. And nextly, a little bit about the Bucks Bounty. It's a special feature of Unacademy. It's basically an opportunity for you learners out there to report any sort of inappropriate content. And if you are the first one to report that issue, you can even claim a prize for that. And you can do that reporting by using the form in the description below of this video. So go check that out. And a little bit about the Emerge. As most of you all know, it's a test conducted by Unacademy every week. The test format is as such that these are aligned with the latest CBSE guidelines to help you crack your term 1 boards. So these are again highly beneficial. The link for that is in the description below. Check that out and enroll yourselves. It's highly helpful, right? Okay, so that's a little pitch we had for today. Without any further delay, we'll quickly go ahead. I know this is a little difficult chapter when compared to the other chapters, right? But don't be intimidated, guys, because at some point of time you are bound to encounter topics like these, right? So let's make it easier. Let's understand it point by point. In case you'll have any questions regarding anything at any point of time, please ping me in the chat box, right? So we can quickly discuss about it. Yeah. Cool. Concepts are very important here. So please pay a little bit of attention to the concepts. The facts and all, it'll automatically follow, right? Okay, so that being said, Bhakti and Sufi traditions, right? Like, what are they? The major purpose for us to talk about Bhakti and Sufi traditions is because we want to understand the religion and the religion landscape in that particular era. Yeah. So in this chapter, we will be talking about different religions, different traditions, different cults that have been coming up in these years, right? So briefly, we have talked about religions a little bit. For example, we've talked about Jainism, we've talked about Buddhism and all in the 4th chapter, right? Buildings, beliefs and thinkers. That chapter we've talked about religion a little bit, but we will talk about that in detail in this chapter, right? So what have we seen? We have seen that a variety of religious structures. What are religious structures again? These are basically holy places, right? Like temples, stupas, monasteries, mosques and all that stuff. So these are religious structures. They have been coming up in every part of the Indian subcontinent, right? Ever since these cults started becoming famous. Yeah. So these stupas, monasteries and temples are not new. They have been there for over so many centuries now, right? So if these typified certain religious beliefs and practices, right? So the mere fact that so many stupas or temples are there, and if as an archaeologist, if you want to go and excavate these, you'll obviously get an impression that ancient world and medieval world did actually believe in religion, right? They believed in some or the other god, whatever god it is, they believed in religion, right? They followed certain practices and traditions. That is what these structures tell us. But on the other side, if you look at all of these textual traditions, right? For example, we have 4 Vedas, we have Upanishads, we have so many other textual religious books, right? And if you read them, you will be able to reconstruct certain other religious beliefs, right? We will get to know a lot of information by studying all these textual traditions, like let's say, was it the same back then, or did the cult actually get modified a little bit and it has a different shape right now? Yeah, so all of these different details we'll get to know by looking at the textual sources, right? So that's that. Abida is here with us. Hi Abida, good evening. Okay, so that's the second point of the slide. Moving on to the next, these new textual sources, whatever we've been talking about, there are so many, right? I've just given you examples of Vedas and Upanishads, but there are so many other textual resources available. Yeah, mostly they were compositions attributed to poet saints, right? Again, who are poet saints? Very simple, right? They were poets in the beginning, as the name suggests, right? They started their career or they started their life as poets, and eventually they became so famous locally that people actually started admiring them, and in some places people also started worshipping them, right? Just like they're treating them something like a god-like figure. So that is when they became saints. So that is a transition from poet to a saint. Even after becoming saints, they still continued writing and composing all these poems, right? So they are poet saints. So all of these textual sources we have, or which are available to us, are compositions attributed to these poet saints, right? Mostly these were in regional languages because ordinary people wrote them. Ordinary people did not know Sanskrit or all of these hi-fi languages, so mostly they were in the regional vernacular languages, right? And because these are poems, they're not very blunt, they often had a music set to it, right? They're not just read out. They have some sort of music, tone, high pitch, low pitch. You all know how music is, right? So these are often designed with the help of a musical tone, right? And they were often sung in the temples or stupas, right? And devotees, disciples, everybody sung these poems. So again, why are we discussing all of this? Because we want to establish the fact that there have been a rich tradition of religion and religious beliefs in this period, right? People believed in some or the other cult. Yeah, so that's the underlying point. Okay, Muskan is here with us. Hi Muskan, good evening. I don't know who that is, but an account by name Viper is also here with us. Hello, it'll be very great if you can tell your name in the chat box, whosoever this account Viper is. Okay, it's just to know you, nothing beyond that. Yeah. Okay. Nimatullah is here. I'm really sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrong, but like, hi, good evening. Hi Hina, hi Sujal. Okay, thank you Pradeep, thanks for that. I'll remember that. Okay, cool. So in case you all have any questions regarding the first slide, just let me know guys. Otherwise we can quickly move on to the next slide. Cool. How many parts it will take to complete the chapter? Muskan, roughly I think it's going to take 4 parts. Yeah. But in case I'm not able to complete it within 4, 5th part, but definitely not beyond 5, Muskan. See, again, if you want me to complete in 2 days itself, I can do that because it's a revision session. But again, these one-shot revisions and all are not working for us because so much of information dump in one class is not good for you, right? So I thought we'll like structurally do it over several sessions. But in case you want to do it over 2 sessions, we can finish it. That's not a problem. Yeah. But as of now, I've roughly planned it over 4 or 5 sessions, Muskan. So, yeah. If you have any suggestions regarding that, you can type it down. कोई MCQ series नहीं है. Pradeep, we do have MCQ tests happening after every chapter, right? So once this chapter is over, then probably we can have a quiz on this chapter. Yeah. If you feel like having a quiz in the next class, tell me in the previous class. I can prepare a set of questions, right? So basically the point is we don't have a set schedule. Yeah, we don't have in this particular class we're only supposed to do this, nothing like that. You can tell me what you want to do, right? We can run it according to that. Yeah. So you'll have a free choice in this. Okay. Cool. I'll move on to the next slide then. Uh, 3-4 sessions will be good. Yeah, fair enough, Muskan. That's what even I was thinking. Okay. Again, somebody's asking for the class timings. So, Nematullah, I usually take classes at 6 in the evening every day. But if you're especially talking about the 12th standard classes, then they happen on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 6 in the evening. So, please make note of the timings. In case there are any changes to this, I'll let you all know. But these are the general timings. Okay. Yeah, I've heard that many people are done with their pre-boards. I'm assuming you'll at least got some rough idea as to how the board papers are going to be, right? Pre-boards are very, very important, guys, to know what the pattern and structure is going to be, especially because it's a MCQ thing this time, right? So please pay attention to your pre-boards. In case you'll have any questions, ask me or ask your school teachers, right? We're here to help you. Okay, that's a great score, Pradeep. Congratulations on that. Cool. So most of y'all have been doing well in your pre-boards. I highly appreciate that. Let's keep doing a lot of revisions, a lot of MCQs, so that y'all will be even better at it, right? So yeah, I'll quickly move on to the next and talk about the next slide, right? So we've been talking about a lot of traditions. So many cults have been coming up. That is the point which we know, right? So what is special about this? Or why is it so important that we are learning about this, right? The first point being that these traditions were fluid, right? Again, what is the meaning of fluid? It means, let's say, there is a particular set of rules that a religion has to follow, right? So in some cases, as time passes by or as decades pass by, their followers find it irrelevant, or they have some problem with the existing set of rules. They want to change it. They can change it. They have the ability to change it, right? That kind of flexibility or that kind of fluidity is there. We are not stuck to some rigid set of rules. You can change it according to the political, social and cultural context. So that is what was happening with all of these cults that have been coming up in this time period, right? But again, if you consider present day Christianity or present day Hinduism, yeah, I don't think that flexibility is there anymore. Let's say I'm a Christian, for example, right? And I want to change certain norms of Christianity. I can't do that. I don't have any authority to do that, right? So that kind of fluidity is not there anymore, but it was there back in those times, right? So that's what, that is exactly what is meant by traditions were fluid. Yeah. Pradeep, the timings are 6 in the evening, Pradeep, Monday, Wednesday and Friday. Okay, so we've finished talking about the fluidity of traditions, right? So because of this, what's happening, right? Let's say in 10th century, some rule was there for some religion. Moving to the 12th or 13th century, the rule has been eliminated. Some new rule came up in the 13th century, right? So when you're reading all of these, when historians are trying to examine these sources and compare these sources, it's a very difficult task for them because they're coming across contradicting things while reading about the same topic, right? So it's definitely a difficult task for the historians, right? So that's a challenge. But nonetheless, these textual traditions or the poet saint compositions are not the only textual source which are available. Luckily, we also have another set of textual sources which are hagiographies or biographies, right? Again, who writes these biographies or hagiographies? These are basically written by the followers of the religious sect, right? So these members or followers or supporters, they usually admire some personality or some saint. They keep writing about their life, which are called as biographies, right? So but again, there is a problem with hagiographies also, because all of the information available as a part of hagiography might not be true, might not be accurate, right? Sometimes they may be exaggerations. So that is why it is good for us not to completely believe in whatever the hagiography is saying, right? So we need to make a note of that. And alongside, even though these are not accurate sources, yeah, at least we'll get a rough idea as to what these authors thought of as these women and men, right? Let's say I am writing a particular hagiography. At least for me, that particular saint is a good person, or that particular saint is a kind person. In reality, he is a kind person or not, I don't know, but I think that he's a kind person. So when somebody else is reading my work, they will get to know what my way of thinking is instead of the reality, right? So that is also some historical information, that is also useful, right? So in that sense, some random information these textual sources keep providing us. Yeah. So as we will look in the further couple of slides and in the next sessions, these sources, be it archaeological or textual, they provide us with so much of insights, right? And usually these sources are characterized by dynamism and diversity. What is dynamism? Dynamism is the change over time. Yeah, I kept saying that some of the rules keep changing over time. That's dynamism. And diversity, because we don't just have one religion, but we have so many cults and religions existing in this period. Right? So that's dynamism and diversity, which are the key characteristics of the sources that are available to us. Right? So now we'll look at some of the elements more closely. Yeah, which will give us a broader picture. So that's roughly the introduction to this chapter. In case you'll have any questions regarding whatever we have discussed till now, let me know, guys. Otherwise, we can start talking about the first sub-theme. Okay. Cool. In case there are no questions, I'll go ahead and start discussing about the first sub-theme, right? Which is titled as a mosaic of religious beliefs and practices. Yeah, which means there are so many religious beliefs and practices, and we will talk about them in detail one by one, right? So perhaps the most striking feature of this phase, yeah, the period we've been talking about, is the increasing visibility of a wide range of gods and goddesses in sculptures as well as in texts. What does this mean? Yeah, before, like right from the beginning of history, in Harappan civilization, in Aryan civilization, during the 6th century BC and all, we had so many religions, right? We had so many religions, so many gods. But what is that one thing which is different in this period? Which is, these gods and goddesses ka images are being represented in the form of sculptures. They are actually given a physical form. Wherever you go to different temples throughout the Indian subcontinent, you will find all these statues and sculptures of gods and goddesses, right? As well as that, these gods and goddesses are talked about in different textual sources. So that is the one thing which is different from when compared to the previous periods, right? So that's happening. At one level, this indicates the continued and even extended worship of the major deities, right? So what are the major deities which we know? We know Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, and a goddess called as Devi, right? We have been talking about these four deities for a really long time because they are important historically also, right? We see the same tradition being continued in this time also, right? In fact, they took so many local forms. For example, in the next couple of slides, we'll see the form of Vishnu, right? Vishnu has so many forms. We have this concept of Dashavatara for Vishnu, right? And even in one place, Vishnu has a particular local form, and in some other place, he has a totally different form. So if you look at these two pictures, you won't be able to realize that both of them are Vishnu, right? So that kind of differences are also there. Yeah, so we'll talk about that also, don't worry. Yeah, so under this mosaic, the first thing we'll be talking about is the integration of cults, right? So what does this mean? So we have so many different traditions coming up, which we are also calling as cults, right? So sometimes these did not remain independently. Sometimes they got merged with some other tradition, right? So that there was a grouping or integrating of two different cults, right? So we'll just have a look at if there are any such situations in this period where two different cults got integrated, right? So historians who have tried to understand these developments suggest that there were at least two processes at work, right? Again, the answer for that is yes, there have been integration of cults, right? But why is that happening? right? Why is the integration happening? And historians have given us two possible answers, right, or two particular processes because of which this integration is happening, right? Number one, it is process of disseminating of Brahmanical ideas. Again, disseminating is nothing but spread. Yeah, disseminating is spreading of Brahmanical ideas to various other places and people, right? So because of the spreading of Brahmanical ideas, integration of cults were happening, right? So again, how do we know that Brahmanical ideas were spreading? There has to be some evidence, right? The evidence we have is so many compositions, compilations and preservations of the Puranic texts in simple Sanskrit verse is happening. Again, why is this important? Because till this period of time, whatever sacrifices, whatever rituals, whatever compositions are there, they have been passed down from one generation to the other orally. Nothing is written, right? But at this point of time, people actually started writing down all of that, writing down the rules of a religion, writing down the traditions, beliefs, compilations of all of these different traditions, yeah, in the form of Puranic texts, and the language which was used was basically Sanskrit, right? So because they are writing down, the message is being spread because people could read it, right? So that is one, which is the spread of Brahmanical ideas. And another interesting thing here is these compositions, they are made available to women and Shudras also. Interesting, right? Because when we look at these Vedic learnings and all of these Vedas, Upanishads and all, they were not read by they were not read by Shudras, women and all, because they thought it was not sacred for them to read. Brahmins did not allow Shudras to read, right? But now the scenario is reversed. They actually had the permission to read all of these Puranic texts. So which means so many people are getting to know about these Brahmanical traditions. That's a good thing. Yeah. So that is one process which led to the integration of cults, right? The other process which was at work is Brahmins, all of these Brahmanical people, they started accepting and reworking the beliefs and practices of these social categories. What does this mean? Right? So they were very rigid in the beginning. Brahmins were very rigid in the beginning. They had this set of rules. For example, the Shudras can't read Vedas. Only they have the authority to compile Vedas or read Vedas. You know, whatever they do, that is the only right thing. Yeah, they have all of these norms or certain set of rules. But in this period, Brahmins also started becoming flexible, right? They started working on their own beliefs and practices. They started, like slightly that conservativeness is being eliminated, right? So some sort of changes are happening within the Brahmanical structure as well, within the Brahmins. So because of these two factors which are at play, that is why the integration of cults have been happening, right? So these are the two factors. If you all have any questions regarding these two factors, let me know, guys. Okay, so integration, right? Like integration has been happening. For an integration to happen, there has to be two different elements or two different traditions. Only then the merging will happen, right? So these beliefs and practices, whatever were existing back in those times, they were shaped through a continuous dialogue between what sociologists have termed as great Sanskritic Puranic traditions and little traditions throughout the land. Again, we'll have a look at this point very clearly in the next slide, because then we'll talk about what great traditions are, what little traditions are, why are they given these particular names, right? So we'll look at that and then we'll go ahead, right? So what are these great and little traditions? right? These particular names of great and little, quote unquote. Yeah. So these terms were coined by a sociologist named Robert Redfield in the 20th century. Not too far away, very recently, right? So these terms came up in the 20th century, invented by a sociologist named Robert Redfield, right? But why did he come up with these names? Because he wanted to describe the cultural practices of peasant societies. Again, he's not an Indian, right? He is a foreigner, so he wanted to focus on the cults in his particular country, right? These peasant societies and all, they had different cultural practices, they were different, right? So he wanted to differentiate between them, and that is why he termed some practices as great and some practices as little. Yeah. Again, what is the differentiation? What is the demarcating point here? The traditions or customs that are followed by the priests or rulers or upper class people who are dominant social categories, right? So whatever traditions and rituals they are following, he classified them as great tradition, right? Very important, guys, please remember, traditions followed by dominant social categories are called as great traditions, right? But on the other side, there are some local practices, right, which are very local. They are often followed by all of these lower classes like peasants, workers, slaves and all. Yeah. So these category of traditions were called as little traditions. Yeah. So that's the basic demarcation he gave. There's a lot of in-depth analysis to it, but we won't go there. Yeah. Just for our reference, dominant social categories, great traditions, lower classes, little traditions. That's the only point to remember. Yeah. So again, these are not rigid because these great and little traditions change over time because of the constant interaction between these two, right? So even in the academic world, other historians kind of criticized Robert Redfield for using words like great and little, because in some sense it is establishing a hierarchy which is not good, right? So there has been a lot of criticism for this theory, but nonetheless these are the terms which were used by Robert Redfield. Yeah. So yeah, which phrase, Aditi, can you please like elaborate your question? Oh, so you're asking about the time period, right? So these Bhakti-Sufi traditions, they started coming up in from roughly 7th till 13th, 14th centuries, and also sometimes 15th centuries, right? So the whole of this chapter focuses from 7th to 15th century, right? So make a note of that, guys. So whenever I say this time period, I'm talking about 7th to 15th generally, but if there is any specific, I'll mention the century, right? So I hope that's clear, Aditi. Okay, so that's great and little. Keep that in mind. Yeah, in the context of that, we'll be talking about another theme, right? So this integration of cults, right? One example of that is very evident at Puri. It's a place in Orissa, right? Puri has all of these different temples, like famous temples and all. Yeah. It has one great temple, right? So the principal deity or the main deity there is identified as Jagannatha. Again, it's a local tradition, right? Jagannatha is a local god. He's a local deity. And if you literally translate the word Jagannatha into English, it basically means the Lord of the world, right? So he was identified in the 12th century, right? But later on, when historians were trying to analyze these different gods and goddesses from Orissa, they concluded that Jagannatha is nothing but a form of Vishnu. See, look at the relationship here. Jagannatha is being merged into the cult of Vaishnavism. See, we don't know whether in reality he is a form of Vishnu or he is not, or Brahmins are just becoming greedy to attract followers. So that is why they are mixing or like the merging Jagannatha cult into the form of Vishnu, right? We don't know what factors are at play, but towards the end, the conclusion that they made is Jagannatha is nothing but a form of Vishnu, right? So this particular form of Vishnu, right? For example, if you take the Jagannatha Vishnu, these images are in your textbooks, guys. So whenever you have time, just go back to your textbook, right? It has a form of Jagannatha which looks completely different, right? It's a local deity, firstly. Yeah, it is made up of wood. Yeah, metals were not used, but in fact, wood was used to make this statue of Jagannatha, right? It was made by local tribal specialists. Yeah, so this is what the image we find in Jagannatha temple. Now we are saying he's a form of Vishnu, right? But the original Vishnu figure we have in our head, like when we think of Vishnu, some figure comes to our head. Or if you see in the movies or images or some other temples also, yeah, we have a certain form of Vishnu. And if we start comparing the form of Jagannatha with Vishnu, they are in no way similar, like totally different, right? Even if you like analyze it, you can't identify that both of them are the same. Yeah, so that is what I mean by regional differences, right? So Vishnu is a universal figure, has been there from a really long time, right? But this Jagannatha came only in 12th century. So what do we see here? The integration of Jagannatha cult into Vaishnavism. Yeah, so that's very evident. Okay, integrated time period. Aditi, this integration kept happening throughout the years, right? This is just one example, right? Jagannatha is only one example where the integration happened in 12th century. But there have been other mergings, other integrations which happened even before this and even after this. Yeah, so it's stretched over a long period. We don't have a certain specific period to point out. Yeah. Okay. So that was one example, right? Jagannatha and Vishnu. So just like I said, these instances of integration are evident among goddess cults as well. It's not just with gods, but goddesses cults also saw so many integrations, right? So worship of these goddesses, like goddesses are nothing but female deities, right? So worship of the goddesses, often simply in the form of a stone smeared with ochre, was evidently widespread. Again, what is ochre? Ochre is nothing but a natural earthly color. Again, just to give you a rough idea, it is some shade of yellow or like some shade of golden yellow, right? So this is the ochre. Yeah, it has some sort of iron oxide mixed with it. It's basically a color. Yeah, even now if you go to all of these rural villages and all countryside, you will come across so many stones or so many trees where this ochre is applied. Yeah, and they start worshipping that tree or the stone, treating it as some kind of goddess, right? So that is what we mean by the worship of goddesses in the form of a stone, right? So that kind of worshipping was widely spread in these particular years. Yeah, so again, right, like these are local deities. Obviously all these goddesses are local deities, right? They have been again incorporated into the Puranic framework, which means again another sort of integration is happening, right? But when you're trying to integrate it, you need to give some justification. You can't just randomly take so many different cults and put it in the Brahminical tradition, right? There needs to be some reason, there needs to be some relation, some sort of justification should be provided, right? So what justification is provided for these goddesses? For example, these deities, right? when they are trying to be incorporated, they often compare these deities to Lakshmi and Parvati, who are the wives of Vishnu and Shiva respectively, right? They are like, all these local deities are different forms of Lakshmi and Parvati. So that's how the justification is given. Yeah. So the basic point here is, whenever you're trying to incorporate or integrate two different cults, there has to be a justification, there has to be a reason. Yeah. So that's that. Any questions still here, guys? Mahima is here with us. Hi, Mahima. Aditi, we'll come to Tantric, Aditi. Just hold on for a second. The next slide, I think, talks about Tantric. Okay, if there are no questions now, we will go on to the next slide. Okay, so the next sub-theme is difference in conflict, right? So under that we have this concept of Tantric, right? So please pay attention, guys. So often associated with the goddesses were forms of worship that were classified as Tantric. Again, in literal sense, or if you like Google or like start searching for the meaning of Tantric, it will tell you that Tantric is some kind of extreme form of worship, right? So I'll give you like real life examples, right, which will make you understand it better. So in some random movies or in some random rural areas, there are these people who often resort to very extreme forms of worship, right? I have seen some weird movies where sometimes, in order to prove their devotion to God, they start piercing their tongue with some sharp object. That is an example of the extreme form of tantricism, right? Or they start walking on the coals, which are obviously hot, and you're walking barefoot, so obviously your leg is burnt, right? So all of these extreme forms, right? Like not eating food for like not just for 2-3 days, but like not eating food for so many days where you'll starve yourself to death, right? So all of these are extreme forms of worship. Yeah. So these extreme forms are which characterize the tantric form of worship, right? So by this example, I'm hoping some meaning of tantric is clear, Aditi. Yeah, but like we will make it clearer in the next slides, but for now just hold on to tantric being as the extreme form of worship, right? So that's that. And obviously these tantric practices were widespread in several parts of the continent, right? Irrespective of the gender, be it men, women, irrespective of your class, caste, doesn't matter. If you have a real interest of worshipping a particular god or a goddess, you can become a tantric practitioner, right? Or tantric devotee. Yeah. So many of these ideas influenced Shaivism as well as Buddhism, right? Fairly easy point. This influence started happening in east, north as well as south parts of the subcontinent, right? So all of these somewhat divergent and even disparate beliefs and practices would come to be classified as Hindu over the course of next millennium. We again see another form of convergence or integration happening here, because these are individual cults. These tantric forms of worship are individual. They have an identity of their own. They are totally different from what the original Hinduism is. But as time passed by, probably in 13th, 14th centuries, they have been started getting integrated into the so-called Hindu religion, right? So that again is happening in the in this second millennium, right? Second millennium is basically starting from 11th century. Yeah. So that integration is again happening. Probably this divergence is perhaps more stark if we compare Vedic and Puranic traditions, right? Just look at Puranic traditions, just look at Vedic traditions. They are in conflict with each other, Vedic people don't like Puranic people, Puranic people don't like Vedic people. There are some sort of conflicts happening between these two groups, right? We'll look at what those conflicts are. But for now, if anybody still has a doubt as to what tantric is, just let me know, guys, or like any point in the slide. So we can go over it again. Yeah, just let me know if that point is clear. Pankaj is here with us. Hi, Pankaj. Aditi, is your question clear? Like, did you get a decent enough answer, or you want me to, like explain it again? Aditi? In fact, everybody else. Because this concept of tantricism is very important, guys. So please pay attention to it. If you all have any questions, just ask me now. Yeah? Okay, I don't think there are any, so I'll move ahead. Okay, so now we'll kind of differentiate between Vedic and Puranic traditions, right? So when we come to Vedic traditions, right, we have three important gods when it comes to Vedic tradition. Yeah, number one, which is Agni, number two is Indra, number three is Soma, right? So these three are important principal deities of Vedic pantheon or Vedic religion. So these figures started becoming marginal figures, right? Especially in the textual and visual representations. They have been talked about. People still worship Agni, Indra and Soma. But you don't have statues of Agni, Indra and Soma, right? Like even now if you observe, we have statues of Vishnu, we have statues of Shiva, we have sculptures of Brahma, Devi, right? But we don't have statues of Agni, Indra and Soma. They have been marginalized from these textual and visual representations, right? So that's that. And we can catch a glimpse of Vishnu, Shiva and goddess in Vedic mantras, right? So these have little in common with elaborate Puranic mythologies. Totally different, right? Like Puranic mythologies say something else about Vishnu, Shiva and Devi. Vedic people treat Shiva, Vishnu and Devi as something else. Totally different ideologies. Yeah, totally two different contrasting opinions. Yes? So in spite of these obvious discrepancies, the Vedas continue to be reverted as authoritative. There are differences, there are conflicts, but despite all this, these four Vedas, which are Rig Veda, Sama Veda, Yajur Veda and Atharvana Veda, the four Vedas which are very important, they still continue to be referred to as authoritative texts. Whatever is written in them is the final word, right? So they have been authoritative. Even now, Vedas have a very important role to play in the religious affairs, right? So I was talking about Vedic people condemning some practices of the other category of people, right? Vedic people did not like Puranic and Tantric people. Tantric people did not like the other two sects, right? So this kind of conflicts kept happening amongst all of these different sects that were prevailing, right? So on the other hand, those engaged in tantric practices frequently ignored the authority of the Vedas. Vedas were followed by Vedic people. Tantric people were against Vedic people, so obviously tantric people hate Vedas, right? So just go by the logic, it will be pretty clear that there are so many conflicts happening amongst these groups. Yeah, so that's the conclusion of this conflicts and differences, right? Because like obviously Vedic people want to display that Agni is powerful or Agni is supreme or Soma is supreme. But on the other side, Puranic people have their own gods whom they want to show as supreme. So there's this competition, right? One person says Vishnu is supreme, the other person says Shiva is supreme. Supreme is nothing but the final authority, right? The most powerful. So because of that, because of the conflicting ideologies, there are so many differences happening within the groups, right? So that's that. Okay. So these categories, right, tantricism, Puranic traditions and all, they also have so many differences with Buddhism and Jainism. Yeah, but they have never been like put it out in the open, but internally there were conflicts, right? So here the concepts of devotion and bhakti also become important, because the way you're worshipping is through bhakti, also called as devotion, right? These can be anything, right? You can sing, you can dance, you can organize pujas, you can organize yagnas. All these are different forms of bhakti, right? So this kind of worshipping a particular god or a goddess is not something new in the Indian subcontinent. It has been forever there, almost for like thousands of years, right? So expression of devotion range from the routine worship of deities within temples, right? Sometimes it's just as calm as you going into a temple once in a while, praying to the god, like closing your eyes and coming back. It's very simple, right? But on the other side, you have these extreme forms of worship where these devotees attain a certain trance like state, right? I don't know if you all heard of these, but there are stories which talk about a devotee becoming completely like into the devotion stage. He, they say that god has come into that person, right? Some random stories, right? So that is like the extreme form of devotion. So it started ranging from as simple as going into a temple to as extreme as attaining that trance state, right? But on the other side, singing and chanting of all of these poems and compositions was very, very normal. Yeah, it was like an ordinary form of worship, right? Especially when it comes to Vaishnavism and Shaivism, these two particular sects mainly followed singing and chanting of compositions, right? So that's the ways in which you can worship a particular deity. Yeah. Any questions till here? Please let me know, guys. Again, this chapter in itself is very, very important. In fact, the whole of the chapter, all of the topics are important. So pay attention. If anything is not clear, let me know. Okay, so I'll quickly move on to the next sub-theme, which is titled as Poems of Prayer, Early Traditions of Bhakti. Right? So we were talking about the poet saints, right? They emerged as very important leaders in different parts of the subcontinent, right? Not because they are leaders, they had a set of supporters. Yeah, there are a set of devotees who follow these poet saints, right? And another point is these brahmanas, they remained important intermediaries between gods and devotees. Even now we have that system, right? For example, all these pujaris or like all these pastors and all in different churches and temples, they are intermediaries between the common man and the god. We can just go to a temple or we can just go to a church, do whatever the prayer you want to, worship him and come back. But no, we are making use of that intermediary. We are asking the priest of the temple to do the puja for us on behalf of us. So basically we are using these intermediaries in order to perform, in order to worship, right? So that has been there forever. Yeah, these traditions also accommodated and acknowledged women and lower caste. Yeah, women can also worship. Shudra people can also start reading Vedas, right? So they have been given exemption, or they have been given liberation within this orthodox Brahmanical framework, right? So that's one good thing. Yeah. We also characterized traditions of bhakti was a remarkable diversity. It's not just one way of worshipping. We have several tons of ways of worshipping, which again is an interesting point, right? So that has been there. And Kavya is here with us. Hi, Kavya. Okay. So, okay, now we'll talk about another important concept. Very, very important, guys. So please pay attention. We have these two words called as Saguna and Nirguna, right? These are not English words, but remember their spellings carefully. It's Saguna and Nriguna. Saguna is basically having a physical form. We can attribute something physically. But on the other side, Nirguna means formless or shapeless. It does not have any physical form, right? That's why we cannot attribute it to something material or physical. So these are the two kinds of bhakti traditions that were prevailing in this time period, right? So these what Saguna entails, right? We have Shiva, we have Vishnu, we have Brahma, and all of these people, they have a particular form. If you look at something, or if you look at some statue, you will be able to identify whether it's Brahma, whether it's Shiva, whether it's Vishnu, because they have a certain form to them, right? Mostly they are anthropomorphic forms. What does that mean? They basically look like humans, right? So that human form with a physical element is what defines Saguna, right? All of these deities like Shiva, Vishnu, all of them have some sort of avatars. But on the other side, there are some cults, there are some goddesses which do not have a physical form. For example, take Allah, right? Allah doesn't have a form. And Quran explicitly says that giving a form to Allah is a crime, it's a sin, right? So there are such traditions also who do not have any statues or physical forms. In fact, they just worship the abstract form of God. It's just mentally there, right? There's nothing physical or material, right? So this differentiation is again important, which is Saguna and Nirguna, right? So please pay attention to that. Okay, I'll quickly run through the next couple of slides because we're already rushing through time. The next important topic we have is Alvars and Nayanars of Tamil Nadu, right? So who are Alvars, who are Nayanars? Different names, but like who are they? So we have so many Bhakti movements, right? Which the earlier Bhakti movements which almost started right from 6th century, right? So two important Bhakti movements that were happening especially in the southern part of India, and that too only in Tamil land, right? One was Alvars, the other one was Nayanars. Who were Alvars? Basic definition: people whoever were devoted to worship Vishnu, they are called as Alvars. On the other side, people who worshipped Shiva, they are called as Nayanars. Again, very crucial. Just make a note of this. Alvars, Vishnu, Nayanars, Shiva. Don't get confused, please. Yeah. So what do these people do, right? They already believed in Shiva and Vishnu. In order to spread the message of religion, in order to spread the message of Vishnu and Shiva, they traveled from one place to another, right? They met so many people in their way, they spread their message, right? And they sang all these songs or hymns in praise of Shiva and Vishnu. That's the job of all these Alvars and Nayanars. So whenever they are traveling, they identified certain places as important places where they can act as the homes for these Shiva and Vishnu, where certain statues can be placed, right? So these small abodes which were set up in the 6th, 7th centuries later went on to become large temples, right? And even now in the 21st century, they are centers of pilgrimage. People go and visit these temples even now, right? So that's what the Alvars and Nayanars used to do by traveling from one place to another. Yeah. So singing compositions of these poet saints, right? They became part of temple rituals in these shrines. Like even today, right? If you go to that temple, whatever poems these poet saints have composed back in 6th 7th century, they are still sung in the temples even now as a form of worship to Shiva and Vishnu, right? So that's again important, so please make note of that. And what is the attitude of these Alvars and Nayanars towards caste? That's the next sub theme we'll be exploring, right? So caste was predominantly there. So many Brahmins were dominating. They did not allow all these Shudras and women to take part in religious affairs. They had a very stringent fourfold caste structure, right? So what is the attitude of these Alvars and Nayanars towards the caste? Did they support it? Did they oppose it? Right? So we'll look at that. So we have information that Alvars and Nayanars basically were against this caste system. They literally hated the caste system, right? They treated it as something bad. They saw it as dominance of Brahmins, and they even put in some effort to reform these systems. They wanted to eliminate the caste system altogether. Even though they were not successful, but at least they attempted to reform the system. That in itself is a good thing, right? So, but why? What is the need, right? Like, why are they against the caste system? Because these Alvars and Nayanars, they themselves belong to various different backgrounds. Some of them are Brahmins, agreed. But some of them are artisans, peasants, cultivators, and even sometimes hailing from untouchables. So they themselves are from different backgrounds. So obviously it is evident that they will be against caste system, right? So basically their attitude towards caste is negative. They don't want the caste system to exist, right? So, and nextly, the importance of traditions of the Alvars and Nayanars was sometimes indicated by the claim that their compositions were as important as Vedas. Again, what does this mean? Since Alvars and Nayanars were not nationally dominant, they were just restricted to Tamil Nadu or some parts of southern India, right? But they wanted to tell the world that their traditions are as equally important as the Vedas, which are universally acceptable, right? So what did they do then? They wrote so many poems, they compiled so many things, and finally they came up with something called as Nalayira Divya Prabandham. It's the name of a book. It's basically an anthology of compositions, right? And again, it's made by the Alvar people, like Alvar sect, right? So this Nalayira Divya Prabandham was referred to as the Tamil Veda. Why are they doing this? Why are they naming it as Tamil Veda? Because they wanted to tell the world that Nalayira Divya Prabandham or their own principles are as equally important as the 4 Vedas we have in general. Yeah, so that kind of importance they are trying to attribute, right? Okay, so Aditi has a question regarding what is the meaning of a pilgrim. Pilgrim is nothing but a person traveling from one place to another, or basically traveling from his own hometown to a different place just for the sake of visiting temples or worshipping gods, right? Let's say I'm going to Maharashtra to Shirdi, right? Because there's a temple there. I'm going on a pilgrimage, therefore I am a pilgrim. But if I'm going to Goa or if I'm going to Manali or something, that's not pilgrim, because I am going on a trip for my enjoyment, for fun, right? So then I won't be a pilgrim. Pilgrim is always associated to worshipping and religion, right? So I hope you got the difference, Aditi. Okay, so last slide for today. We'll talk a little bit about the women devotees, right? It's very surprising to know that these Nayanars and Alvars, again, who are Nayanars and Alvars, right? Basically, they are poet saints. So if I am not wrong and if my memory serves right, I think there were 12 Alvars and 63 Nayanars, right? Which means 12 poet saints of Alvar community and 63 poet saints of Nayanar community, right? So out of these 63 plus 12 people, it's not just all men, but women were also a part of these traditions. Yeah, there were women devotees as well. Yeah. For instance, if you look at the compositions of Andal, Andal is a very, very famous Alvar poet saint, right? She contributed so much to the Alvar tradition. Her compositions are even sung till date in different temples, right? So again, we see a women figure here. They are very much a part of the um, culture, right? And Andal obviously saw herself as the beloved of Vishnu, right? Her verses express her love for the deity. Like she just absolutely loved Vishnu, right? That staunch follower of the staunch devotee of Vishnu, right? If you even like go through her compositions or her poems, you will definitely realize that she has so much love for Vishnu. Yeah. So that's one example of a women poet saint from Alvar tradition, right? But on the other hand, we have another woman from Nayanar tradition called as Karaikal Ammayar, important figure. Yeah, Karaikal Ammayar. She's a Nayanar, which means a devotee of Shiva, right? In order to worship Shiva, she often resorted to extreme asceticism in order to attain her goal. Again, what is the goal for all these people? They wanted to attain moksha, which is salvation, right? So, in order to attain that salvation, Karaikal Ammayar often resorted to extreme asceticism, right? So that's what Karaikal Ammayar did. Again, irrespective of what they did, the basic point here is women are very much a part of these traditions and they are important, right? So her compositions are also famous within the Nayanar tradition. Yeah. So again, this does not mean they did not have a social life. Probably they did not marry. Yeah. One thing is they did not marry sometimes, but not every time. Some women devotees actually married, right? So what do we see here? It's not total world renunciation. You are giving up certain social obligations, right? But that doesn't mean you're becoming a nun. You're balancing your religious life as well as personal life, right? So that is a feature of women devotees. And the mere fact that there are so many women as devotees, that in itself is a challenge to the patriarchal norms, because at that time the society was very much patriarchal. Men were dominating, men were the head of the household. Whatever men used to say, that is the final word, right? But the mere existence of women deities is a challenge to these patriarchal norms. It's like some sort of establishing that we are not less to men, like women are not less to men. We can also be great devotees, we can also be great thinkers, right? So that's a challenge to the patriarchal system. Yeah. So that is a little bit we have about the women devotees. That's all we have for today, guys. We still have a lot to cover in this chapter, right? We'll talk about them in the next couple of classes. But yeah, before that, if you all have any questions, just let me know. We still have another 2-3 minutes to wind up this class. So in the meanwhile, type down your questions if you have any. Yeah. Harsh is here. Hi, Harsh. Just to let you know that the timings are actually, I mean, the class starts at 6. It's not a 7 p.m. class. Yeah. So make note of that, Harsh. Okay, Aditi says, clear, ma'am. Good that you understood. I'm hoping others also understood whatever we've discussed today. Again, guys, I'm repeatedly saying this, that this chapter is a very, very important chapter. Alongside, this is a tough chapter, right? Most of you all have already like told me that this is a tough chapter. Indeed, it is a tough chapter, right? So please pay attention to whatever we're doing, because I don't think we'll have time to revise this chapter once again before the board exams. right? So I think this is the last revision we'll be having for this chapter. So that is why I'm asking you all to pay clear attention. We might have like doubt solving sessions and all, but like itna explicit explanations I don't think we'll be having again before the term 1 boards. So that's why please pay attention. Okay, keep typing down your questions in case you all have any. Since we're already past time, I'll try to like wind this class up. So just to inform you guys that there is some sort of crash course happening for standard 12 students. It already started on 1st of November, but it's not late. Yeah, you can still join. It's a crash course for worth duration of 1.5 months, basically till your term 1 boards, right? And the medium of delivery here is English. Yeah, so and these are the educators you see on the screen here. Have a look at them, have a look at their bios, and if you are interested, you can go join that, and this will be highly helpful for your term 1 boards, right? So do that. And yeah, thank you so much guys for tuning in so dedicatedly at 6 p.m. every day. I highly appreciate your efforts. Thanks so much. And lastly, if you like the content of these videos, please do like them, share it as much as possible, and subscribe to the channel Unacademy and scholars in particular. Yeah. Thank you once again. Thanks so much. Officially the class is over. In case anybody wants to leave, you can, but like I'll just hang on for a couple of seconds in case y'all have questions. So people who ever have questions, just stay back. Yeah. Okay, Aditi has a question regarding asceticism. So Aditi, the literal meaning of asceticism is basically where, let's say I'm an ascetic. Yeah, what will I do? My way of life is I will not be involved in any sort of social activities. I won't like party, just in like 21st century terms I'm saying, right? I won't go to social gatherings, I won't go to family meetings, I won't party, I will not marry, right? All of these worldly pleasures, these are all pleasures, right? Because when you're partying, there is some sort of fun, there's some sort of pleasure. When you're marrying somebody, when you're spending the rest of your life with somebody, it's fun because you have a companion by your side. So all of these things you're supposed to give up if you want to become an ascetic and want to lead an ascetic life, right? So asceticism is totally opposite of what we're doing right now. Yeah, you need to give up all of these worldly pleasures, denounce yourself from the world, and then lead like a saintly life. Just to put it very roughly, you can use the word saint to define what asceticism is. Yeah, I am hoping that's clear, Aditi. And yeah, so next class for standard 12 will be on Friday, which is what, like 12th of November. Yeah, so next class is on 12th of November, which is a Friday at 6 p.m. right? So again, we'll be discussing the continuation of this chapter itself in that class. So don't forget to tune in because this chapter is really important. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So if that is the end of questions, we can close. But in case you'll have any, just quickly type them down, guys. Okay, I don't think there are any. Okay, it's high time I wind this up. Anyways, thanks again. Thanks once again for tuning in. I'll see you guys again on Friday for the continuation of this chapter. Until then, have a good evening and also have a good day tomorrow. Yeah, I'll see you soon, guys. Bye, everyone, and take care till then.